I'm going to go through what I do today if I was a new digital nomad looking to start out in Southeast Asia. Take everything with a grain of salt, as this ultimately is just my own opinion, but I have been out here for 2 years and dealt with a lot of other people doing things over here as well, and I have a pretty good understanding of the region and where people seem to go wrong. So I'm going to do my best to demystify some myths partially, but mainly just give you a bit of a guideline of what I do if I were in your position looking to move out here and start working online. You've probably got this idea of you're going to move over here and you're going to travel around every few days, every week to a new island or a new something rather anyway, and it's going to be very touristy while working online. In reality, most people get here and realize that they value a bit of consistency, and you're probably going to settle down in the place for at least a shorter period of time. What most nomads tend to do is either they just end up becoming kind of like myself and not really nomads. They more or less just base out of one place. They still work online, a remote worker, but maybe not a nomad per se. Or there's the other one, which is the more common, the long-term digital nomads you meet who are really doing it. They're probably coming to a place once, twice a year for 1 or 2 months. And you tend to see these in the co-working spaces. You'll get, that guy who comes every October, whatever, and they come in and they stay a month or two and then they go on down to an island or they go back to their country for a while or whatever. That's probably the more common thing. So what I'm saying is if you're thinking of traveling around all the time, it's going to be a lot harder to work than you think and to stay consistent, especially if you have a client-facing business or you're working in a team of people. You're going to need to be around for business hours, whatever they are, wherever you're from. So if I were in your position now, what I'd do is do what you're doing now. Research, go on YouTube, find a place you like. When you find a location you like, maybe book a place for a month or a few days with the intention of booking a monthly rental after that. You really want to have a base at least to start with. If you want to do that perpetual traveler thing, go for it. But even then, I would recommend just settling in for a month. Get used to the climate, because it can be very draining if you aren't used to the hot, humid weather. Get used to just the vibe and the culture. It's a lot more busy in Southeast Asia compared to a lot of other places. Even on the islands, it's a little bit more intense. So you want to just get used to that and be able to get into the swing of things, kind of get how they work. And irregardless of where you're going, whether it's not even Southeast Asia, it could be anywhere in the world for that matter, working completely by yourself, completely alone, without a routine, that's where the challenge comes in a lot of the time. Working without a routine is where a lot of people actually find the difficulty. And I've had that myself as well when I've moved around a bit. When you go to a new place, it's hard to find out when the day you're going to work, where are you going to work from, and how does your lunch breaks look and things. It kind of sounds like you just figure it out, but really it's not that easy for some people. I'm one of them. I really need to establish a routine around my day to fit work in, or I guess to fit around work, depending on how you look at it. But you don't have that if you're moving around a lot. So just get to a place for a month, settle in, get in the swing of things, and then if you want to start traveling, it's going to be easier. Before you leave and before you go to this first base, I recommend learning a little bit of the local language. That's really important. I can't stress enough how valuable it is speaking just even the smallest bit. Hello, thank you, excuse me. That's really enough in a lot of places, and it's enough. It's not about conversing with people so much as just respecting all the culture and the people. If you can say hello in the language and then you go into hand signals, Google Translate and broken English, that's enough. You've made a slight effort to be polite, and most people respect that, or almost everyone. I'd also learn a little bit about the culture. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just a bit. There is so many resources online about this, so I'm not even going to get into it, but just learning, I guess, cultural quirks, the most important things, or basically what that means is things that we just don't know or don't have. For instance, the shoes inside the house is pretty ubiquitous in all of Asia. You just don't wear shoes in the house. Even some local shops, you take your shoes off before going inside. Something like that seems small, but over here, if you walk in with your shoes on, it is quite rude. Again, people just, as they do anywhere in the world, understand you're a foreigner, that's okay, but still just learn these basic things. And honestly, it's almost more for you than for them, because once you know these basic things, you relax a lot more because you're not so stressed about offending someone or saying something or doing something you shouldn't do. And also look into the visa requirements. Depending on where you're from, this is more or less important. But if you plan on spending a month, say if you're going to Bali and you go, I'll just go on a tourist visa for a month and maybe stay a bit longer if I want. Well, if you want to do that, you're going to have to extend it. And the same goes for Thailand. So you might get your 30-day visa-free stamp on arrival or your visa in Bali. And After that, you're going to have to extend it though. So bear that in mind. That's another important thing to consider. So now that you've found your base, you've learned a little bit about the language and culture, and you know that you can enter the country, which is obviously important. The next thing to look at is just your arrangements. What's it going to look like? So looking for accommodation, I'm not going to get into that because there's just so much on there. We've also covered it as well. But monthly rentals generally are a lot cheaper than night to night. Maybe in Thailand, for instance, 70% cheaper per night when averaged out. But you want to sort out, just have a look around, where do you think you're going to work from, where you're going to stay, where you're going to go to the gym, say, or where you're going to look at the things you want to do there. Are they all close by? Can you plan it so it's going to be more efficient, more easy? Are you going to be based out of the right area? And is it an area that interests you? Because even in places like in, say, Chiang Mai or Canggu, there's little areas that are better or worse than others for particular people. So you want to look at this and just plan it out. And that's my recommendation. Consider, are you going to co-work? Are you going to work from home? If you've got to take lots of calls for your job, maybe working from home is better. If you've got to take a few calls, find a co-working space that has plenty of Skype rooms. And it's all these little things you want to think through that make it so once you get here, it's so much easier. The next thing is, if you're bootstrapping your own business, have a financial plan. If you've got, say, $10,000 saved up, you might think, oh, heaps of time, I've got plenty of time. But if you spend that, like a lot of people do who live in places like some people in Bali, some people in mainly the big cities, Bangkok or Kuala Lumpur or whatnot. I know a lot of people who spend, $3,000-4,000 US a month. How they do it, I'm not sure, but just be careful. Just have a rough idea of what you're spending. Although everything's a lot cheaper, some people tend to get this, I guess, death by 1,000 cuts kind of problem happening to them. Where 3 ringgit, I'll buy it, or 20 baht, easy. And like people just spend, and they don't realize how quick they run out of money. If you estimate that your business is going to take 12 months to be profitable, it might take longer than that. Probably will. We tend to overestimate our abilities, I think, and I think that's been confirmed by plenty of research and whatnot. Nevertheless, have your expenses planned out. I have this much for the month. What I do, I don't budget or anything. I can't be bothered, and who can really? I do take a set amount of drawings from the business into my personal account each month. So when I see halfway through the month that I'm already, 2/3 way through the money, I go, oh, gotta chill out. And that's really important. Makes a big difference. If you do have to do that, I'd suggest doing it that way. The next and most important one in its own way is, don't be an idiot. Didn't really know what else to call this, but really, that's it. I mean, my golden rule, and I say this time and time again, is if you wouldn't do it in your home country, don't do it over here. Let's say you're from Australia. Would you ride shirtless, drunk, on a scooter you don't have a license or insurance for, down the middle of a road on midnight on a Saturday? Probably not. However, plenty of people do it over here. The whole concept of leave your brain at the airport, and sorry to speak frankly, it really is true. There are so many instances that people get into terrible situations, like health problems, serious injuries, death, financial strife, usually because of these things. Just because they did something they wouldn't do at home is unbelievable. And really, it shouldn't be that, I say it shouldn't be that hard, but really, when you see everyone else around you doing it, it's easy to get complacent. When it comes to things like respect as well, would you be drunk, screaming through the streets when there's, religious monuments, say temples, churches, whatever, nearby? Would you be screaming and carrying on, screaming out a football chant while shirtless at midnight on a Wednesday? Probably not either. So again, don't do it. I'm not going to go any further on it because there is just too many examples of foreigners behaving badly over here and getting themselves and other people into trouble and just generally disrespecting the people of the place. So I'm going to leave it there, but nevertheless, just remind yourself that if you're about to do something that might feel wrong or stupid or disrespectful, ask, would I do this at home? If the answer is no, don't do it here. The next one is just to be aware of the local laws of the place you're at. Most of us, I assume, are from the West, and we have, relatively speaking, very lenient laws when it comes to, say, drug offences, religious defamation or offences, things like that. And just it goes on and on. Over here, depending on where you are, that doesn't exist, or it's not to the greatest extent. You can't go around, and again, Most people aren't doing this, the vast majority of people really. But you can't go around, disrespecting the religion of a place or the people of a place. Or the other ones is the obvious ones that, your parents tell you about that will certainly happen to you, that being drug offenses. That it's not as common as you think it is. Like I very rarely have heard of people being set up or anything like that by police. I've heard of it once, and it was I'm not going to name where, but it was in a place that was a real backwater, and they really were doing something they wouldn't do if they were back home. Nevertheless, just be aware of things like that. Like, drug laws are a lot stricter. There's plenty of laws around so many different things. The last point I want to make on this topic, and I can't stress this enough, is that you can't bribe your way out of everything. I see people, mainly like backpackers who've just arrived here, and I'm not blaming them at all. I was the same when I first got here, who thought like, oh, if I get in trouble, I'll just pay the police. Well, maybe, but maybe not. You don't know. And if your whole get out of jail free card is, and your whole legal defense is waving $100 note in a guy's face, you better hope he wants to take it, because bribery and corruption, although it's very common over here, it doesn't mean it's accessible to you specifically. So don't go relying on that as a way to get out of, riding a bike without a license, or, using illegal substances, or just doing anything that's going to get you in trouble, because it might not work, and it probably won't work realistically. So that's something I want to be clear about. It's not as corrupt over here as you'd think. Some other risks, scooters. I've mentioned it before, but I'm just going to mention it again. Just be so careful on scooters and anything like that, scooters, mopeds, motorbikes, whatever you want to call them. Chances are you're not insured. Look into your policy. There's usually a lot of different terms and conditions in the PDS of that being the legal document attached to your insurance. You're probably not insured, and if you want to get a license in that country, it can be difficult. If you're going to live in a place long term, definitely get a license, get in touch with us, we can help. Also, vaccinations. If it's your first time coming to a country like this, or even if you've been before, chances are you need a few vaccinations, and you might even want to consider something like malaria medication. It's not common, but if you're in the more remote areas, it's definitely something you want to think about. So go talk to your local doctor before you leave. Have a chat, try go a few months before, because some things like, I think it's hepatitis A, you need 2 shots, they need to be like 6 weeks apart. So just get that sorted before you go. Even just do it now so you have the freedom to go when you want to go. Realistically, most of the diseases people catch over here, they don't get back home, are mosquito borne. So, just if you're in a real bad mosquito area, maybe wear long pants, definitely wear repellent. That probably will solve 90% of your problems as far as diseases and things like that go. And as for food poisoning, don't be scared of street food, just be scared of food that's been sitting around, whether that's at a hotel buffet or at a street stall. The best thing you can do is just eat where the locals eat. There's a high turnover of food, and they don't want to get sick either, so that's what I'd recommend. It's probably going to be the most delicious and cheapest too. The last risk is theft. Petty theft, depending on where you are, probably isn't as common as you'd think, but it still does happen. So have copies of all your documents. I like to photocopy all passports and other things like that. When I go through immigration, the first thing I do is look at my visa, take a picture of the new visa on my phone, so I have that record as well. That way it also helps if I get pulled up by police somewhere and they ask to see my visa and I don't have my passport on them, I can show them a photo of the visa and my biodata page. Technically, you are meant to have your passport on you in most countries, but the photo is, it's a bit of maybe a get out of jail free card to an extent. That's certainly not legal advice, but just do it. And also have some cash on you, maybe some on your person and then some in your room. And that way, if either you or the room gets robbed, you've got a little bit of cash to get yourself out of trouble. And also have some different bank cards. Keep one on you. If you're traveling with friends, that's great, because you can keep one in your friend's bag and they can keep one in yours. And that way you've got a bit of separation. You just don't want everything in one place. And you want a few different ways of getting money and all that. And that's going to make your life a lot easier, just a lot more stress-free. Before you leave your home country, change all your SMS verification or two-factor authentication to an authenticator app. It's more foolproof, although sometimes, your SIM card can work over in a different country, as you just don't know. It can be a bit more difficult to sort that kind of stuff out. So I just like to change it all over to an app, and that way I don't have to worry about it. And make sure you save the backup codes and print them off and keep them with your other copies of documents. That's about it for the video. I will mention a few places you might want to base yourself from to begin with. Firstly, Bali. Canggu and Ubud are really popular. They are very busy for that matter, so if you want somewhere a bit more relaxed and with some more surf, Uluwatu is a good choice. Chiang Mai is probably the next most popular, and it's a bit cheaper, a bit more easy. It's definitely less busy, and it's very well set up. It's a uni town, so that's kind of how the Nomad thing got started. Basically, Westerners came here and attached to all the co-working cafes and spaces and whatnot, and the cheap accommodations. So that's a really good place to start, because it's really easy to get your foot in the door, and it's, you know, the airport's 15 minutes away from the main area of town and all that, so it's really stress-free and easy. The other place I'd recommend is Kuala Lumpur. If you don't want the full nomad scene, or really guess more of the hustle and bustle of Southeast Asia, and you want to kind of step into it, Kuala Lumpur is a good bet. Although it's a big city, much bigger than the last two mentioned places, it is very well developed. It's really affordable for what it is. The value for money is great. Everything's very clean. The transport's pretty good. So yeah, it's also a very good option I'd consider. And that's it. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you got plenty of value from it. If you've got anything to add, please let us know in the comments, or any questions, happy to answer them as well.